Vincent Harlow stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan office, watching the city pulse 40 stories below. At 38, he had built an empire from nothing, turning a failing tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation that revolutionized digital security. His success came with a price, one he paid willingly: complete emotional detachment. The office door opened without a knock. Vincent did not turn around. He knew the footsteps, measured and confident, belonging to his assistant of 3 weeks. Cassandra Mitchell entered, carrying a tablet and coffee. She had learned quickly that Vincent preferred his coffee black, his reports concise, and his personal space undisturbed. What she had not yet learned was why a man so successful seemed so utterly alone. "The meeting with the Tokyo investors is confirmed for Thursday," Cassie said, placing the coffee on his desk. "I have prepared the presentation files and arranged for the translator." Vincent finally turned, his steel-gray eyes assessing her, with the same calculating precision he used to evaluate stock portfolios. Cassie wore a navy suit, her dark hair pulled back professionally, her expression neutral. She had learned that too. Vincent Harlow did not appreciate emotion in the workplace. He could make sure the contracts include the revised terms we discussed. His voice carried no warmth, only efficiency. Cassie nodded but hesitated before leaving. Vincent noticed immediately. "Is there something else?" She clutched the tablet tighter. "Your brother's memorial is next week. Should I clear your schedule?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Vincent's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. For 3 seconds, silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. "I do not discuss my personal life at work, Miss Mitchell. Thought I made that clear when you were hired." Cassie felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she held her ground. "You did, sir. I apologize. The rule exists for a reason. Do not break it again." She left quickly, her heart pounding. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and exhaled slowly. 3 weeks working for Vincent Harlow, she had just crossed the one line he had drawn in concrete. When Cassie first interviewed for the position, Vincent had been direct. He needed someone efficient, discreet, and emotionally detached. He did not want birthday celebrations, personal questions, or friendly conversation. He wanted an assistant who understood that work was work. Everything else was forbidden territory. Cassie had agreed because she needed the job desperately. Her sister Rachel required expensive medical treatment for a rare condition, and their insurance had stopped covering the costs. The salary Vincent offered was triple what she had earned at her previous position. She could afford to swallow her curiosity and follow his rules. But something about Vincent Harlow pulled at her. Beneath the ice, she sensed a profound loneliness, a wound that never healed. She had seen the photograph in his drawer once, when retrieving files. A young man with Vincent's eyes, but a warmer smile. Thomas Harlow had died 2 years ago in a car accident, and from what Cassie gathered, Vincent had never recovered. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. Cassie worked through lunch, double-checking every detail for the Tokyo meeting. At 6 o'clock, most of the office had emptied. She was preparing to leave when Vincent's door opened. "Miss Mitchell, I need you to accompany me to Boston tomorrow. We have an emergency meeting with a potential acquisition target." Cassie glanced up, surprised. "Tomorrow? But the quarterly reports are due?" "Delegate them. This takes priority. We leave at 7 in the morning." Before she could respond, he returned to his office and closed the door. The flight to Boston was smooth but silent. On his laptop, while Cassie reviewed the acquisition files, the target company, a small but innovative cybersecurity firm, was hemorrhaging money but possessed technology that could revolutionize Vincent's business model. They landed in rain. The driver took them directly to the company headquarters, a modest building in Cambridge. The meeting lasted for hours, negotiations intense and complex. Cassie took notes, occasionally providing research Vincent requested, but mostly observing the way he maneuvered through corporate warfare with surgical precision. By the time they finished, night had fallen, and the rain had become a downpour. The driver apologized. A major accident on the highway meant they would be stuck in traffic for hours. Vincent made a decision quickly. "We will stay overnight. Book 2 rooms at the nearest hotel, but every hotel in the area was booked solid. A medical conference had filled every available room within 20 miles. After 30 minutes of searching, Cassie found one option. There is a small and 15 minutes from here. They have one room available. Vincent's expression hardened. One room? It has 2 beds, Cassie added quickly. And honestly, sir, it is either that or we sleep in the car, he agreed with obvious reluctance. The inn was quaint, tucked away on a quiet street lined with historic houses. The room was clean, but small, 2 beds separated by a nightstand, a single window overlooking rain-soaked streets. Vincent stood rigid in the doorway. Cassie could see his discomfort radiating like heat. I will sleep in the chair, he announced. That is ridiculous. There are 2 beds. This situation is inappropriate. Cassie set down her bag and faced him. Mr. Harlow, we are 2 adults, stranded by circumstances beyond our control. Promise to stay on my side of the room if you stay on yours. For the first time since she had met him, Vincent Harlow looked genuinely uncertain. Then, slowly, he nodded. The evening passed awkwardly. They ordered room service, ate in silence, and prepared for sleep with the careful distance of strangers. But at midnight, Cassie woke to the sound of Vincent's voice, raw and broken, calling a name.
Thomas.
No, please. He was dreaming, trapped in a nightmare. Cassie rose from her bed and approached carefully. Vincent thrashed, his face twisted in anguish. Without thinking, she touched his shoulder gently. Mr. Harlow, wake up. His eyes snapped open, disoriented and filled with pain. For one unguarded moment, she saw everything he had hidden. The grief, the guilt, the crushing loneliness. Then awareness returned, and the walls slammed back into place. But something had shifted between them. Cassie had seen past the armor, and Vincent knew it. The rule had been broken not by a question this time, but by something far more dangerous: compassion. Morning arrived gray and uncertain, much like the atmosphere between them. Vincent woke before dawn, already dressed when Cassie emerged from the bathroom. Neither mentioned the nightmare. Neither acknowledged the moment when his carefully constructed walls had crumbled in the darkness. The drive back to the airport was scheduled for 8 o'clock, but when they reached the lobby, the innkeeper delivered troubling news. The highway remained closed. A multi-vehicle pileup and flooding had shut down the main routes. No flights were leaving Boston until the weather cleared. Vincent's frustration was palpable but controlled. When do they expect the roads to reopen? The innkeeper shrugged apologetically. Could be this afternoon. Could be tomorrow. The storm system is stalled right over us. They returned to the room. Vincent immediately pulled out his laptop and phone, attempting to manage his empire remotely. Cassie sat by the window, watching rain streak down the glass, feeling the weight of confined space pressing down on them both. Hours passed in uncomfortable silence. By noon, hunger forced them to order food. They ate at the small table. It's a clink of silverware, the only sound punctuating the rain's steady drumming. Finally, Cassie could bear it no longer. Are we going to pretend last night did not happen? Vincent's fork paused midway to his mouth. He set it down carefully, his expression unreadable. Nothing happened last night. Yeah, you were having a nightmare about your brother. I woke you. That happened. His jaw tightened. Which part of my rule did you not understand, Miss Mitchell? I do not discuss personal matters, even when those personal matters are tearing you apart. The question landed like a stone in still water. Vincent rose abruptly, moving to the window, his back to her. His shoulders were rigid, every muscle taut with suppressed emotion. You do not know anything about me. Cassie stood as well, her voice softening. I know you work 16-hour days to avoid going home to an empty apartment. I know you have not taken a vacation in 3 years. I know you keep a photograph of your brother hidden in your desk drawer, and I know that 2 years after his death, you are still punishing yourself for something. Vincent spun around, his eyes blazing. You overstep your boundaries because someone needs to. Cassie's heart pounded, but she held his gaze. You hired me to be efficient and detached. Fine, but I am also human. And watching you slowly destroy yourself with isolation is not something I can ignore. For a long moment, Vincent stared at her. Then something in his expression shifted, the anger giving way to exhaustion. He sank into the chair, running his hands through his hair. "Thomas died because of me," he said quietly. The words seemed dragged from somewhere deep and painful. "He borrowed my car that night. I was supposed to drive to the investor meeting, but I made him go instead because I was too busy closing another deal. The roads were icy. He lost control. By the time I reached the hospital, he was gone." Cassie felt her throat tighten. She moved closer but did not touch him. "That was not your fault. He was 26 years old. Brilliant, kind, everything I was not. And I sent him to his death because a business deal was more important than driving myself. It was an accident, Mr. Harlow." "Vincent," he corrected, his voice hollow, "if we are breaking rules, you might as well use my name." The intimacy of the offer startled her. She sat across from him, choosing her words carefully. "Vincent, guilt is not the same as responsibility. You could not have known what would happen." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time she saw the man beneath the billionaire. Vulnerable, wounded, desperately alone. "After Thomas died, I made a decision. No more personal connections. No relationships that could distract me or cause pain. Work became everything because work could not die on an icy road." "But you are not really living either," Cassie said softly. "You are just existing." Before Vincent could respond, Cassie's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. The name flashing across it made her hands tremble. "I need to take this," she said. Stepping into the bathroom and closing the door, Vincent heard her voice through the thin walls, tense and frightened. "Jonathan, I told you not to call me." "No, I cannot do that. The arrangement is over. I do not care what you think you are owed." Silence. Then Cassie's voice rose slightly. "My sister's treatment is not your concern anymore. I found another way. Leave us alone." When she emerged, her face was composed, but her eyes betrayed her distress. Vincent was standing, his expression sharp with concern and something else. Something protective. "Who was that?" Cassie hesitated. The rule about personal matters went both ways, but the walls between them had already begun to crumble. "Jonathan Pierce. My former fiancé." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "Pierce? The hedge fund manager?" She nodded. "We were engaged 2 years ago. He offered to pay for my sister Rachel's medical treatments. Experimental therapy, the best doctors. All I had to do was marry him, but you did not." Cassie wrapped her arms around herself. "I discovered what kind of man he really was. Controlling, manipulative. He did not want a wife. He wanted property. When I broke the engagement, he threatened to sue me for breach of contract. He claimed I owed him the money he had spent on Rachel's initial treatments." Vincent's hands curled into fists. "That is why you needed this job." "Yes. The salary you offered meant I could afford Rachel's treatments and slowly pay Jonathan back. But he keeps calling, insisting I still belong to him, threatening legal action if I do not return the money immediately." The protective instinct that surged through Vincent was unexpected and fierce. He had spent 2 years avoiding emotional connection. Yet here was Cassie, brave and battered, stirring something he thought long dead. "How much do you owe him?" Cassie shook her head. "I cannot accept money from you. That would just trade one obligation for another." It is not an obligation. Consider it a bonus for exceptional work." "Vincent, no?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You saved me from drowning in guilt last night by refusing to let me hide. Let me help you escape from Pierce." Tears gathered in Cassie's eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because you see me," Vincent thought. "Because in 3 weeks you have made me feel more alive than I have in 2 years. Because when I look at you, the emptiness inside me starts to fill with something I cannot name." But he could not say those words. Not yet. Instead, he said, "Because it is the right thing to do." The afternoon stretched into evening. The storm showed no signs of breaking. They talked carefully at first, then with increasing openness. Cassie told him about Rachel, about growing up with an absent father and a mother who worked 3 jobs. Vincent shared memories of Thomas, stories that made him smile for the first time in months. As darkness fell, they sat together on one bed, the television playing quietly in the background. Neither acknowledged how close they sat, shoulders nearly touching, the space between them charged with possibility. "Thank you," Cassie said softly. "For listening, for understanding." Vincent turned to look at her. In the dim light, she was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with physical appearance and everything to do with the strength radiating from within her. "Thank you for breaking my rule," he replied. "I needed someone too." Their eyes met and held. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Vincent felt his carefully maintained control slipping, felt the pull toward her like gravity. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Cassie's breath caught. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She knew this was dangerous, knew that crossing this line could destroy everything. But she also knew that some risks were worth taking. Vincent leaned closer, his intentions clear. Cassie's eyes fluttered closed in anticipation. Then his phone rang. Shattering the moment like glass, Vincent pulled back, answering with barely controlled frustration. The Tokyo investors had moved up the meeting. He needed to return to New York immediately. The highway had just reopened. They gathered their belongings and charged silence, the almost kiss hanging between them like an unanswered question. As they checked out and climbed into the waiting car, both knew that something fundamental had changed. The rule had not just been broken, it had been obliterated, and neither of them knew what came next. The return to New York felt like stepping back into a different life. The city's noise and rush swallowed them whole, pulling them back into roles they had briefly abandoned. Vincent retreated behind his professional mask, though it no longer fit as comfortably as before. Cassie resumed her duties with practiced efficiency. But her eyes held questions neither dared voice. 3 days passed in careful distance. They spoke only about work, maintained appropriate space, pretended Boston had never happened. But the pretense was transparent. Everyone in the office noticed the shift between them. The way Vincent's gaze lingered when Cassie entered a room, the way her voice softened when she spoke his name. On Thursday morning, Cassie arrived early to prepare for the Tokyo presentation. She found Vincent already in his office, staring at something on his desk. When she entered, he quickly closed a folder, but not before she glimpsed the contents. Legal documents with Jonathan Pierce's name prominently displayed. "You are investigating him," she said. Not quite a question. Vincent did not deny it. "Pierce has a history of using financial coercion against former partners. 3 women before you. All settled quietly out of court when he realized I was digging into his business practices." Cassie's hands trembled. "Vincent, you cannot fight my battles." "I am not fighting them. I am simply ensuring you have the ammunition to fight them yourself." He opened the folder, revealing documents that detailed Jonathan's fraudulent investment schemes and tax evasion. "This information goes to your lawyer. What happens next is your choice." Before Cassie could respond, Vincent's assistant knocked urgently. "Mr. Harlow, there is someone here demanding to see Miss Mitchell. Security is holding him in the lobby, but he is causing a scene." Cassie's face went white. "Jonathan." Vincent was already moving. "Tell security I am coming down." "Vincent, please." Cassie grabbed his arm. "Let me handle this." His eyes met hers, fierce and protective. Not alone. Never alone. They rode the elevator in tense silence. When the doors opened, Jonathan Pierce stood in the marble lobby, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his smile sharp as a blade. He was handsome in a polished way, everything about him calculated to impress. But Cassie now saw what she had missed before. The cruelty lurking beneath the charm, the possessiveness masquerading as devotion. "Cassandra," Jonathan said smoothly, ignoring Vincent entirely. "We need to talk about your debt. My lawyers are prepared to file suit unless you return to fulfill our arrangement." "There is no arrangement," Cassie said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Our engagement ended 2 years ago." Jonathan's smile never wavered. "You accepted financial assistance under false pretenses. That makes you legally obligated to repay me. Unless, of course, you would prefer to honor the original agreement. Marry me, and the debt disappears." Vincent stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Pierce, I suggest you leave before this becomes embarrassing for you." Jonathan finally acknowledged him, his eyes glittering with recognition and contempt. Harlow. I should have known. Already trying to claim what is mine? Miss Mitchell belongs to no one, Vincent said, his voice dangerously quiet. And your claim on her finances is fraudulent. I have documentation proving you inflated treatment costs and fabricated expenses to increase her debt. Take her to court if you want. My legal team will destroy you. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Jonathan's face. You are bluffing. Vincent pulled out his phone, displaying scanned documents. Medical billing records showing you charged Cassie 3 times the actual treatment costs. Financial statements revealing you used her supposed debt as a tax write-off while still demanding repayment. Wire transfers to offshore accounts that violate multiple federal regulations. Should I continue? Jonathan's composure cracked. His face flushed with anger. You think your money makes you powerful? I have connections that will bury both of you. Your connections are currently under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission, Vincent replied calmly. An anonymous tip submitted last week? I imagine they will be very interested in your investment practices. The lobby had gone silent, security guards watching, other employees frozen on their way to work. Jonathan looked between Vincent and Cassie, his expression twisting into something ugly. You are making a mistake, Cassandra. He does not care about you. Men like Harlow do not care about anyone. He is using you just like I did, only he is better at hiding it. The accusation struck something tender. Cassie glanced at Vincent, seeing him through Jonathan's eyes. Powerful, remote, accustomed to buying solutions to problems. Was she just another problem he was solving? Another acquisition to be managed? Vincent saw the doubt flicker across her face and felt something crack inside his chest. He turned to Jonathan, his voice dropping to a tone that made security guards step closer. Leave now, or I will have you arrested for harassment. The choice is yours. Jonathan held his gaze for one more moment, then turned sharply and walked out. The lobby exhaled collectively. Vincent placed a gentle hand on Cassie's elbow, guiding her toward the elevators. She moved mechanically, her mind spinning. Back in Vincent's office, silence stretched between them. Cassie stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. Vincent watched her, feeling helpless in a way that terrified him. Are you all right? He asked finally. Is he correct? Cassie turned, her eyes searching his face. Are you just solving a problem? Am I another deal you need to close? The question pierced him. Vincent had faced hostile takeovers, market crashes, and corporate warfare without flinching. But this fragile woman, asking if he cared, was bringing him to his knees. No, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You are not a deal. Then what am I to you? Vincent crossed the distance between them slowly. For 2 years he had lived by his rule, had convinced himself that isolation was safety. But Cassie had shattered that illusion, had shown him that survival without connection was not really living. You are the person who made me remember what it feels like to be human, he said quietly. You are the reason I wake up wanting to come to work instead of dreading another empty day. You are the first person since Thomas died who has made me believe that maybe, possibly, I deserve to be happy again. Tears gathered in Cassie's eyes. Vincent, I do not want to be another person you lose. He reached out, cupping her face gently in his hands. Then do not leave. Stay. Not because you work for me, not because you need the job, but because you want to. I am terrified, she whispered. Everything with Jonathan started with promises and ended in manipulation. How do I trust this? How do I trust you? Vincent's thumb brushed away a tear that escaped down her cheek. You start by letting me prove it. Every day. For as long as it takes. The truth in his eyes undid her. Cassie had spent 2 years building walls of her own, protecting herself and Rachel from more pain. But Vincent was not Jonathan. Beneath the billionaire's cold exterior lived a man who understood loss, who carried guilt like a stone, who was brave enough to try again, despite knowing how badly love could hurt. Your rule, she said softly. No personal involvement. Vincent smiled, the expression transforming his face. Rules are meant to be broken by the right person. You were always the right person, Cassie. From the moment you asked about Thomas's memorial, you were breaking through. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to refuse, but Cassie rose to meet him. Their lips touched softly at first, tentative and questioning. Then the kiss deepened, 2 years of loneliness and longing pouring into a single moment of connection. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Vincent rested his forehead against hers, his arms wrapped securely around her waist. "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "Relationships, emotions, any of it. I will make mistakes." Cassie smiled through tears. "Then, we will make mistakes together." The phone on Vincent's desk rang, shattering the moment. He ignored it, but Cassie laughed softly and pulled away.
You should answer that.
"The Tokyo investors are waiting." Vincent groaned, but picked up the phone. His expression shifted as he listened. Then he covered the receiver and looked at Cassie with something like wonder. They want to triple their investment. The deal is done. Cassie's face lit up with genuine joy. "Vincent, that is incredible." He hung up slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "I need to tell you something. When Thomas died, I blamed myself so completely that I shut down everything else. Building the company was the only thing that made sense because numbers and deals could not hurt me. But they could not heal me either. I have been existing in a gray space for 2 years, and then you walked into my life and suddenly everything was in color again. You saved me too," Cassie said quietly. "From Jonathan, from debt, but mostly from believing I had to carry everything alone." Vincent pulled her close again, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I am going to call my lawyer. We are going to make sure Pierce never threatens you again. And then I am going to take you to dinner, somewhere far away from this office. And we are going to talk about everything except business." Cassie pulled back just enough to look at him. "What about your rule?" "There is only one rule now," Vincent said, his smile genuine and warm. "No more running from what matters." 3 months later, Vincent stood in a hospital room holding Rachel. Mitchell's hand while she recovered from the surgery that finally cured her condition. Cassie stood beside him, her head resting on his shoulder, exhausted but radiant with relief. "Thank you," Rachel whispered, squeezing Vincent's hand. "For everything." Vincent looked at Cassie, seeing his future in her eyes. "Your sister saved me first. I am just returning the favor." That evening, they walked through Central Park as autumn painted the trees gold and crimson. Vincent had sold his Stark apartment and bought a home filled with light and warmth. Thomas's photograph sat on the mantel now, no longer hidden, alongside pictures of Cassie, Rachel, and the life they were building together. "Do you ever regret it?" Cassie asked. "Breaking your rule?" Vincent stopped walking and pulled her into his arms. "Every rule I ever made was about protecting myself from pain, but I learned something from you. Living without pain means living without joy, and I would rather have both with you than neither without you." Cassie kissed him softly, feeling the last of her own walls crumble away. They had both been broken by loss and fear. But together, they were learning that healing was possible. That love could be trusted, and that sometimes the best things in life came from breaking. The rules that held you back? The billionaire had only one rule for his secretary, and she had been the first to break it. But in breaking it, she had given him something far more valuable than protection. She had given him a reason to live again.